Hi, thank you for tuning in to Dynamic Art LLC. I'm your host, Daniel Butler, and today's episode is dedicated to illustration work. We're going to take it from beginning to finish. So one of the reasons why we're creating this particular series on how to do illustration work is because I wanted to take an in-depth look at not only the design of illustration, but just also the complications and different things that happen when we're going through the process of thinking about how to create illustration work for sale. Now, a lot of you out there may be looking for different types of jobs, but creating your own illustration work is always a good source of revenue, even in a tight spot. You'll be able to make a couple dollars by creating your own digital artwork or your own artwork on canvas. Hopefully, the objective is to show you different ways to use your art skills to create this illustration work and to make more money. I hope that you enjoyed today's show. Let's get started.
All right, thanks for tuning in, and as you can see, we're going to start out looking at the finished product, and this was what the finished result was after I got done putting everything together and designing it. And it does have foreground, middle ground, and background when it comes to doing this particular layout. Now, one thing I do want to stress to anybody that is doing illustration work or prints for sale and different things of that nature, you have skilled artists and you have talented artists and you have those who are just trained in the craft, but I truly believe that when it comes down to illustration work, the best work is just going to be what's creative and just overall good design, meaning that it has a decent amount of balance in it, and the colors basically enhance the picture. With that said, let's go ahead and get into this. Now, I'm going to break this down, and I'm going to first start off with the face, and we'll go into it right here. All right, now there were a lot of mistakes that I made, and I keep finding myself making a lot of these mistakes as I get into it. Now, this right here is what you would consider the finished result. And I'm just going to turn this off here for a second, and I want to bring back in some of the other elements that we had. Alright, okay, and unfortunately I did put down a lot of the actual artwork over top of the lines, and so I don't have this particular part of it broken down in stages like I will with the next illustration part of this design, which would be him shooting. But a couple things that I wanted to show you, because it'll show where I had some real drawbacks. And the first thing is, let me remove these hard lines. In the initial sketch that I did of him, there were a couple things I did wrong. One was eye placement was a little off, and the eyes are like extremely huge. Like, I mean, if that's the effect you're going for, then cool. I see a lot of character artists use this particular method, but I was still aiming for a realistic approach, but still done in a artistic style, meaning even though it may have hints of realism, you can still tell that it was artistically made, because there's no point in making artwork if you're going to really just try to copy a photograph and make it exact, because if that's the case, it can just use the photograph, especially in today's technology. So I always want to have that artistic feel to it, but I struggled a lot with the eyes in this particular piece. And then to top it all off, he was a little wide, and so there were a couple things that I had to do to fix that, and I'm just going to zoom in here. Oops, not out, in. And even though I used the regular guidelines to try to line this up and do things right, the structure of the face overall was okay, but you know, those key elements, eyes and nose, those things have to really be correct in order to get the right sense of who this particular person is. But knowing that I was having problems with it, I decided to go ahead and move forward. And from there, I went ahead and I created the solid lines. And as you can see, it really highlights how bad these eyes are looking. And they gave me a lot of problems going through this piece. I almost scrapped it and decided to start over. But I stuck with it, and I came up with an overall fix. And let me turn off. As you can see, this is with the incorrect eyes, and as you can see, this is with the outline. But I'm going to take those off. Okay, and as I take those off, what I'm revealing is the new structure for the eyes that I laid out. And as you can see, they're a lot smaller and not as blocky. And this really did take a little bit of work to get through, and to the point where I was unable to record each step because I was fixing so many mistakes that I did in the drawing. And then one of the issues I think I had with this particular piece was that the angle of the head was slightly tilted up, and so it changed the way things kind of looked to me. And so I just really had to do a lot of repair work in order for this piece to turn out right. But I wanted to show you this because I wanted to show you that in the process of doing whatever illustration work you do, you're going to make mistakes, and you're going to have to work through them, and you're going to have to make them look the best. Now, the last thing that I had that was a problem with this was that his face was still kind of wide. Even though it was looking like the person I wanted it to look like, he was really thick in the face, like he had gained weight. And what I decided to do, because it was like, you know what, I'm not going to sit here and redraw it at this point. I've already put too much time into it, and you know, the eyes really killed me. I decided to use the transform tool, and I just squished it in just a bit. And as I squished it in, he leaned out and things looked a lot better, and I was able to live with this particular end result. Now, given time, I'm sure I could make it even better than what it is, but for the purposes of what I'm doing, I felt like this would be a practical approach. And by using the transform tool, which if any of you don't know what the transform tool is, you can hit Command T, and well, technically it would be right here, but I'm not on a layer that you can edit, and that's why you're not seeing that. But up to edit, and here we go, transform. And then with these particular tools, you can rotate or screw or basically distort it. But what I did was I just kind of just squished him in just a little bit to take off how meaty he looked, and he leaned out. And I took this particular piece, and this is what I was going to use in the final piece. Now, this is my color palette, and typically I select the colors based on whatever I'm working on at the time. And I end up using this color palette for other drawings as well, but this is the color palette that I selected for this particular art piece overall. Okay, so let's move on to the next part of this particular player, and this was him shooting. Now I have a lot more of these stages laid out, and I'm just going to zoom in here, and a lot of good detail. And so let's just kind of like get into it, and we'll walk this one backwards as well. First, let me take it back to a gray palette here. That will be important so that you can see what you're doing. Actually, let's start off with the white. You know, we'll take it back to construction lines. So, as you see, I'm just getting rid of particular steps here. Wrong one. And scan 1, scan 2. And there's something there, but we cannot see it at the moment. Alright, bringing the color palette. I had added one additional color that I needed for this particular piece. And let's just go back to the hard lines and our construction lines, and just kind of this is the initial sketch that I had when laying this out. And one of the things that I really hated was the fact that right here, I was really having problems with where that foot should be and how it should look, even though I was looking at different illustrations of it. But overall, I had a good layout of what I wanted to do, and so I decided to go ahead and work through it. And we move on to our hard lines, and this is pretty much me laying out how things should look as I hard line it. And there's no real form in this, just kind of like giving me the structure of things that I want to put in. And from there, I add in my solids. And once I add in my solids, things start to look a lot better. Now, one thing I did have to do in order to paint this is I did have to change the background, and I changed it to gray. That way I would be able to see what was going on. We can turn off our construction lines there. And from there, we're going to start adding in our tones and shades. And I'll turn this one on. And the first tones and shades are going to be kind of like just detailing the white. And what I do is I draw underneath those hard lines. If I bring those hard lines back in, you'll kind of see. And as you can see, the hard lines gave me the idea of where the definition needed to be. And after I got that definition in, I take those hard lines out, and that allows me to put in all the shading and detail that I wanted to have in this particular piece, especially dealing with the outfit. And as we move forward, we just start adding more of the skin detail. I used a combination of this peach color here. Well, actually, this is a yellowish beige color, and then we have more of a brownish peach color here. These were the first two combinations that I used to blend, and then by the time I got to the second one, I was using a combination of this browner and this reddish brown, and I don't have an exact color for those because I'm actually just selecting these as I go along to fit the piece best the way that I wanted it. And one thing I did want to kind of zoom in here and show you, I struggled with these shoes. For whatever reason, the angle was extremely hard, but we were able to pull it off and get a level of detail that I was satisfied with. But when you decide to blend your skin tones, and I'm only going back to that because I think that is probably one of the hardest things that people have to deal with. I don't use the smudge tool, but I do work with a Cintiq Companion 2, and I put on the sensor for pressure, and that allows me to do a nice blend of colors. And I basically shade this like I was using coloring pencils, and except for, it gives more of that painted type look depending on what brush you use. And I'm using regular brushes. The only brush that is different is I do use Jazz's construction brush, because when I'm sketching, for whatever reason, that brush seems to feel the best for just sketching and doing a general layout. But when it comes to doing the rest of it, I just use a regular brush. There's no specialty brush on this, and I just basically take it step by step and add in all the different things. Now, as we move forward, we can bring in our basketball. And for that, I'm changing the background back to black because it gives more of the effect that I want to show. And there's a glow put on this ball. So after I actually did the illustration work and drew this ball in, I wanted it to have that old video game feel where, like, when a person gets hot, that ball starts to glow. And because this is Curry, who is probably one of the best 3-point shooters of all time. I wanted to display that, and I'll explain that a little bit more when we go into the poster. So both these pieces are done. Now we're going to go back over to our main piece, and this is our main piece. And I can just kind of explain the layout for this. Now, a couple things to note. Because I'm doing a lot of different players and a lot of different scenery and different things, some things are going to remain the same. So these trophies were created separately to go into this particular piece. And the best thing about having these things separated is that I can use them in multiple artworks and I don't have to keep reproducing them. For his particular piece, I did have to create 2 more trophies here, but once they're created, if any other player has this same trophy, I just can slide it in and keep things moving. As far as the layout on this piece, I wanted to highlight not only where Golden State is, but highlight what their mascot is, which is the Golden Gate Bridge. And so to do that, I wanted to take it back into a natural setting. And this is just kind of like a play on what this team is and or where this team is from. They call Curry one of the Splash Brothers, so I felt it would be a good chance to kind of implement that into my design. And as you can see down here, as he jumps, there's a splash going up. And then we have his front figure here, which, you know, just highlights his face and gives you a good look at who he is and what he looks like. And the composition of the colors, I wanted to keep them all in the same type of mode, which is kind of like those bluish colors, you know, mixed with a little bit of pinkish purple. And that was mainly to get the sun setting in this particular case. I didn't want to use a brighter color and take away from the glow on the ball or the trophies themselves. So those are a couple different things. And then the balance part of it, you know, I balanced it out by having the head shot on one end and the body shot on the other, and the trophies kind of in the center and not off to the side. And that was just to give it balance. So this particular piece is done. I did create these in CMYK, and it's usually just because I'm printing it. If you're going to do RGB, then you have to keep in mind that those are going to be web-based colors, and so they may not print properly. I'm not saying that you can't pull it off, but for the most part, you want to make sure that you are working in a format that's going to be workable for the method that you're going to print. And since we print in CMYK, that is what I go with. So with that said, we'll move over to the printing part and we'll finish this up. Thanks for tuning in, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button.
Alright, now that that's concluded, we have our finished product here, and as you can see, it turned out pretty well. A couple things to talk about. One would be, when it comes to pricing your own illustration work, a lot of times it's going to be based on the material that you print on. In this particular case, this is a heavier stock, but I wouldn't price anything that I would consider fan art any higher than, I would say, $18 to $19. Typically, I'm going to stay in between 10 to 15, as long as, you know, the production of what it costs me to make it says that is a reasonable price. But you also want to check your areas. You want to check where you're at and what prints are going for normally. Now, if you're printing on canvas or some higher quality, it's always good to up your price for the quality of the material that you print on. But you also want to look at the clientele that you're trying to sell your artwork to. If you're selling to people who are young or youthful, they may not have as high as a budget as somebody that may be older. And you got to think about the material that you're selling as well. Things like this aren't typically known to go for high prices, and so you want to make sure that you keep it in an affordable price range. I'm Daniel Butler. I hope you enjoyed today's show. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and that like button. Thanks. Please subscribe so that we can blow up this channel. Have a good day.